There's so much craziness happening on the plains. Let's talk through it together. I'm Zach Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We are dapping it up with Montgomery radio legend Darrell Dapprich. Welcome on in to this special live stream edition of the show. Darrell, I guess let's just go in chronological order as we try to make sense of everything that's happened so far. Thursday night, it becomes official. Cadillac, Carnell Williams, he is stepping down. He is resigning from his post as running backs coach. Obviously, a legend, an Auburn football legend, an Auburn icon. I've got a picture of him running next to Tank from the Texas A&M game. Auburn fans clearly love Cadillac, but this is a situation where it feels like this wasn't Caddy truly stepping down. I think this was kind of Hugh Freeze in the direction of this program choosing to look elsewhere.
Yeah, there's been a lot of pushback today from people reaching out to me on X and wanting, texting me saying, why so cryptic? Why isn't the university or you guys coming out? Make no mistake about it. There's two reasons. Number one, Cadillac, what he did 2 years ago, during that whole Brian Harsin debacle when he took over as interim coach, was such a unifier and uniter. And I'll be forever indebted, as will the Auburn fan base. People started believing again and started having hope again because of what he did. That should never.
He was a beacon.
He was.
It was incredible. It was an incredible moment.
Never forget that. Never forget that in light of whatever, happens or whatever you may think about this or whatever rumor. I mean, just again, I would really caution people to just take a pause on this and understand coaching decisions are very, very integral. They're very complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. We as fans or people that cover the team sometimes don't even know all of them. So to speculate and to comment and just say, quit being so cryptic, it's not. Sometimes it's personal things that don't deserve to be discussed publicly. I'm not saying that's the case in this scenario, but there's so many moving parts that you don't want to get it wrong, and you don't want to make something worse than it already is or could be. Bottom line.
Yeah. The biggest whiff of takes that I've seen today is so many people saying, "Oh, McGriff started the trend of nobody wants to work under Freeze." We saw it with McGriff, we saw it with Ron Roberts and Philip Montgomery, all these guys, right? And now Caddy and then Zach Etheridge as of this morning. And I can tell you that all of those guys were either asked to leave or encouraged to find positions elsewhere.
Except McGriff. Except McGriff.
But I think McGriff may come back.
Right. I mean, listen, that's not anything that we're like trying to speculate on. There are notable writers for Auburn that have said he's coming back and just hasn't signed the paperwork yet. So if you can't connect the dots on that somebody comes back after somebody else leaves, I don't know I don't know how to help you. I mean, that's an example of somebody not wanting to be here because somebody else was. Some of that gets cleaned out, and then, oh, by the way, I want to come back. It's not people jumping ship. I'm not spinning it and putting it in a light to cover Auburn. It's not that. People were asked to leave and move on for the betterment of the program. You can call it mutual parting of the ways. It's a great way to say it, just to kind of save face. McGriff, not in that category. McGriff left on his own, but he left for a valid reason that has been corrected, and now he wants to come back. If you leave and want to come back to coach under Hugh Freeze, that kills the narrative that nobody wants to work under Hugh Freeze. Because if you leave and want to come back, I mean, when you leave, you're free and clear. What would make you want to come? You're out from underneath that. So listen, and again, in this world of college football, when people talk about turnover and, oh, it's only 1 year, I mean, things change. Sometimes to your in your control, sometimes out of your control. And you're paid a lot of money to react accordingly. And I think that's exactly what's going on here. The Zach Etheridge situation, I don't know if people know this or not, and I don't mind sharing it publicly. I've confirmed that he's either engaged to or in a serious relationship with the head coach of Houston's daughter. Well, I mean, when you make so when you make a statement, he's either engaged to or dating Willie Fritz's daughter. So, I mean, you talk about what's best for me and my family or getting out there. I mean, if you love somebody and you're engaged to them, I would think you'd want to be closer to them. I don't know. Again, speculation, but people need to understand the whole story before they start assuming it's people are leaving because they hate Freeze, right? You're laughing, and I can't see what you're laughing at. But
no, you keep going.
You don't want to. People assume that, and it's so frustrating when that's not the truth. They're not leaving because they hate Freeze or Freeze pushed them out after he used them up. That narrative is just tired. It's old, and it's quite honestly, it's just wrong. It's not true. It's false.
It's very lazy. It's very lazy. And look, I think Hugh Freeze is willing to ruffle some feathers to do what he believes is right and best for the future of the Auburn football program. And I think in order to do that, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. And I think that's what part of this certainly looked like. I do think there were some disagreements. I do think there were things that weren't perfectly in lockstep with one another, but I would imagine that happens often, and a lot of times you can work through it. So, I mean, this was just a match they didn't seem to be on the same page with moving forward, and that's okay. But like, I know a lot of folks love Carnell Williams. I know a lot of folks love Zach Etheridge, two Auburn men, no question about it. But Hugh Freeze is the head coach, and he's got to do what he thinks is best for the future of this program. Like it, hate it, disagree with it, agree with it, doesn't matter. Hugh Freeze is making these calls. And so now when you kind of look at the writing on the wall and say, okay, what's coming next in regards to the formation of this coaching staff? Earlier today, Charles Kelly was made official, worst kept secret in the world. He's been working there for a hot minute now, but him being named co-DC tells me they know who their defensive coordinator is. Maybe I'm reading in between the lines too much. Maybe I'm guessing a little too much, but before we speculate on the DC side of it, Charles Kelly, Darrell, incredible recruiter, really good defensive-minded head coach. There is nothing, let me be very clear here, there's nothing about this hire that I do not absolutely love.
It's why when people think that this is just something that's comes out of the blue or is spontaneous, this has been in the works since the Music City Bowl. It got leaked by the Colorado side, and there's speculation.
Was ticked.
Yeah, there's speculation as to what would be the motive behind Deion Sanders leaking that, but it got leaked. He's been on campus for a while, so these were all moving parts along the back channels behind the scenes. He's an excellent recruiter, an excellent defensive mind. He's somebody that I've wanted Auburn to get back on the Plains for years. And so it's a kind of a match that's going to be really, really good where you've got co-DCs, you've got position coaches, you've got one guy that can really focus on maybe recruiting and another on X's and O's. I don't know. I think both guys that we've talked about, if it's Chris Kiffin that comes, or if it's, any of the names you've heard bandied about are all good recruiters. So it's a great
point. If it's not Chris Kiffin, I would be surprised. Actually, I would be surprised if it was not Chris Kiffin to be the next defensive coordinator here.
You don't make all these moves without having a plan in place and knowing exactly where you're going to go. And so that's why Auburn fans are going to be thrilled with Charles Kelly. And when they watch some of the recruiting gets and the fish that he reels in, and again, he's a veteran coach. He's been in a lot of places. He knows the Auburn, Alabama landscape. Yep. So it's a great hire. And it's, and then the news about Trevon Reed that came out an hour and a half ago being promoted as well and getting on the recruiting trail. I believe wholeheartedly that during the Great Potato Famine, Trevon Reed was really, really crucial when Hugh Freeze came in and he waited to hire coaches so he could keep Trevon Reed on the recruiting trail. That's by design. That goes to show you how good of a recruiter he is. So that's a good move. You've still got a lot of different moving pieces, but so far the Kelly thing, the Reed thing, very, very good and beneficial for Auburn. And I think Auburn fans are going to love what they see in these moves.
Yeah. Still several folks asking about why wouldn't they want to promote Caddy? And I don't think Caddy's ready to be a Power 5 offensive coordinator. And that's the only really thing you could promote him to. Just talking to folks, I don't think that's it. And I'm curious to see where he pops up at, what kind of job he gets, but I'm not expecting it to be a better job than the one he just left.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Hugh Freeze is going to call plays, so that job description wouldn't have included calling plays. But you've got to get this one right after you fire Philip Montgomery after 1 year. That grace period, that honeymoon period, is over for Hugh Freeze. You've got to get it right. You've got to show improvement on the field. Play calling's got to be better. All that's got to be better. Game planning, and I just don't think that people, the powers that be, felt that Cadillac was ready to take that next step. You can't gamble on that. When you're going into year 2, you've got to show marked improvement.
Yeah. Darrell, we're getting questions about Trevon Reed's promotion. He's not an on-field coach, but you can designate one off-field coach to be a recruiter. Isn't that the rule? Am I right on that?
Yes.
Okay.
But it was a promotion. He did get promoted, and he got officially handed that title where he's, allowed to be that dude. I mean, it was a definite on his Twitter. He posted it and retweeted it. So that's why I felt comfortable mentioning it. If the guy himself put it on his own X page, I felt like it was and that's the best way to do it. Just go to his page and you'll see his official title. He's changed it.
Yeah, he is very online, and you have to be to recruit at the level that he is. So I think that's great. Yeah. So moving forward, I think the timing depends on what happens with the Houston Texans, because that's where Chris Kiffin is currently. He's a linebackers coach for the Houston Texans currently. The Texans play the Browns this weekend in the playoffs. And Darrell, I know you're a big Cleveland Browns guy, so I know you're cheering hard for them. And so we'll see certainly what happens.
I can't do it. It's hard. It's hard to make the decision whether I want to see the Browns eliminate Kiffin so he can get here quick, or watch the Browns fans just drink up their tears as they get bounced from the playoffs. It's a tough call for me. It really is.
No, you've been a diehard Browns fan your whole life, so I just wanted to make sure people knew that. But as far as the timing, though, like I think if Houston were to win, I do think it delays some things. I am curious when we kind of pivot now to the offensive coordinator speculation. I think it's going to be Derek Nix. I think you're in that boat as well, that you think it's going to be Derek Nix. And I think he will be the offensive coordinator and the running backs coach. He was the running backs coach at Ole Miss for forever. So that's a role that he's comfortable with. And obviously, I think he'll be able to bring a lot on the recruiting trail as well. And he and Hugh Freeze can finish each other's sentences, which is something that I think is important. And I think that's something that Hugh Freeze is looking for. And so Derek Nix isn't tied to anything. Like, he can accept a job whenever. A year ago, when Hugh Freeze was filling out his first staff here at Auburn, we saw both coordinators get hired on the same day. It was the same morning. I believe it was very close together. It was one after the other, because I had to record like 4 shows that day because stuff kept happening. I remember it very clearly. It was in a hotel room. It was not fun. But I think ideally they want to drop it all close together. I don't know why, but that's just kind of the gut feeling I get, Darrell. Obviously, if Houston were to win this weekend and Kiffin's season with the Texans extends another week, do you see them dropping the Derek Nick news sooner?
Yes. I think at that point, you can't wait to group it. Just go ahead and get that out of the way, get Nix on campus, get him acclimated to who's going to be on the staff. I mean, and here's why. I mean, he's not only going to be running backs coach, you mentioned it, he changes his title. He becomes an offensive coordinator, which he isn't currently at Ole Miss. So that, by design, is a promotion by title. You want to get him on campus, and you want to show some continuity, and you want to show that there's a plan, especially in light of what happened yesterday, last night, and this morning. That's why the timing about Kelly and Reed and possibly McGriff couldn't have been any better. And Auburn waited because you've got to move some parts before you can make announcements. So they handled that correctly. I think they showed a lot of respect and refrained from doing that. I think the Nix thing on the offensive side of the ball, you'd want to do Nix and Kiffin together. But if for some reason Houston beats Cleveland in the playoffs, I don't think you wait 2 weeks. You just go ahead and announce Nix and then wait on Kiffin and announce him.
Yeah. Well, of course you want the Browns to win. That's who you are. That's what you've always pulled for, and I respect that about you. I think it's great. How mad are you at me right now?
Tough call. I just Browns fans. They've been doing a lot of this the last 3 weeks.
I'm joking. Darrell's a huge Baltimore Ravens fan, so that's why I'm
You
giving him.
You are blaspheming me, my friend. You go from bad to worse. If I had some holy water in here, I would throw it on the screen.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it's terrible. And don't throw Bengals in there either. I hate the whole AFC North, all of them.
Right. Even the Steelers, right?
No, now, come on now.
Okay, just kidding.
That's why it kills me when people say I root for the SEC. I don't get that mentality. I don't know if you're that way. That's like me saying I want to see the Bengals lose, the Browns lose, the Ravens lose. I can't pull for somebody. I don't care. I the whole year you kind of get used to hating them or wanting to do well against them. How do you just flip a switch and say, "Oh, the bowl games"? No.
Yeah, I got you. All right. So as far as coaching staff development, do you think we're done seeing people leave or be asked to leave or resign or whatever? Do you think that's done?
I'm not 100%. I know there's a couple of people like Jason Caldwell who I respect immensely that says they are done. Yeah. But, I've just heard some back channel things that maybe one more position to make room for one more coach that's coached at Auburn before. We'll see. I'm not trying to be cryptic here. I guess it sounds like I am, but you asked the question. So I'm not 100% convinced that it's completely done, but I think at the most you might, and very small chance that you might see one more.
If there was one more, who would it be?
I'm not, no, you ain't getting me to even speculate on that. Nice try. Good try, but nah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. I think moving forward. So I don't know the order of this because, like we said, the playoff game I think impacts the timing more than I would like, but I get it. There's no other option here. I think your coordinators are Derek Nix from Ole Miss and Chris Kiffin from the Houston Texans, and then I think Wesley McGriff will be back on this staff, and I think he will coach defensive backs with Charles Kelly, and I'm sure they'll split it safeties and corners like they did a year ago with McGriff and Zach Etheridge. And I think you'll see like maybe a Kent Austin coach quarterbacks. Is that crazy to think?
I think that's absolutely the move that's going to happen. That makes sense. So, guy that coached for Hugh Freeze before and coached under him in that role. So that'll be good.
Yeah. So if all that happens, is this a better staff than it was a year ago?
Yes.
I think so too.
More complete, more well-rounded, more hybrid staff, meaning they can do both. They're good X's and O's schematic guys, but they're also can recruit their butts off. And in this day and age of college football, you can't afford to have specialists on your staff. You better have guys that can do multiple things and wear multiple hats. And I think this staff does that. I really do. Potential staff.
Yep. In regards to what's happening also in the state, it looks like a lot of smoke around Kalen DeBoer. So we'll see if that happens or not.
Yeah, I heard that we heard that name a lot yesterday. It kept coming up, and then that he was supposed to be in studio with a television station this morning and had to reschedule that. That kind of raised a red flag. He has yet to come out like Norvell and Sarkisian, Lanning, and some of those others and said, "I'm staying." He hasn't said that at all. So I don't know. You can connect the dots on that. I've also heard from a pretty good source that Saban really loves him, likes him, and is very high on him. And if the notion is out there that Nick Saban built up enough equity in his career to have a personal say in his successor, and I think it's naive to think he doesn't, then I would think that DeBoer, especially when Nick Saban himself said he's having an office in the stadium, and he told the players, "I ain't going anywhere, and I can get on to you just as much from my office as I can the field." You would think that it would be somebody he would feel very, very comfortable working with in an advisory role, and that wouldn't feel threatened by him being there. And there are some names that have been thrown out that I absolutely think would not take the job 100%. If Saban was, Daddy Saban was in an office in the stadium.
Yeah,
DeBoer,
so ESPN is reporting that DeBoer and Alabama are in negotiations. So
well, there you go.
I mean, this is a guy, his college coaching since 2010, Southern Illinois, Eastern Michigan, Fresno State, Indiana, Fresno State as a head coach, and then Washington. That's just, I mean, I think he's a good X's and O's coach. And I think he's I think he's good at prep, but the recruiting aspect of it, I mean, how much of it is Alabama's able to recruit itself? I mean, I think that's going to be a major hurdle for him.
It is. I mean, I know that people want to immediately start making comparisons about, this would be another situation like Harsin, who was from the Northwest and didn't recruit in the South. But I would say this, number one, DeBoer has played in a national title game, has been a, Power 5 head coach. So in Washington, and coached in a national championship game where Harsin was not. So he got some good players in the transfer portal. He's a good recruiter. Now, is he a good recruiter in that region of the country? I don't know. I think if you recruit, I think that's over exaggerated when people say he's not from the South. He's never recruited in the South. I think if you can recruit, you can recruit, because look, Nick Saban came from Michigan State and went to LSU and recruited his you-know-what off. Urban Meyer was an Ohio dude and never was south of the Mason-Dixon line except for vacation. Came down to Florida and recruited very well. So I don't necessarily always buy in that you have to be from this region to be a good recruiter down here.
But they recruited well at their previous stops too, right?
Yeah, and I'm thinking DeBoer did as well. I mean, I'd have to look at his class last year, but I thought he had a pretty good class.
36th in the 2024 class. Let's see what they were in 2023. I'm scrolling. 26th.
Yeah, that's kind of mid, but you get a bump for who you're recruiting for.
Yeah, it's easier to recruit for Alabama than it is Washington.
Sure. But again, a top 10 recruiting class at Alabama may look good for a Kalen DeBoer, but for the Alabama fans, like, we just dropped 8 spots from what we're used to. I mean, that's to put it in perspective. There are some fan bases, including the one we're talking about, but when you get 8th or 9th, you're like, woohoo! And in Alabama, they're like, crap. I'm taking those little Debbie cakes back away from the statue. That ain't working for me. So
that's right.
It's all perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You are expected to be top 3 every year if you're Alabama in recruiting. And can he do that? We'll see. I don't think so. I think Saban in a living room, even though Alabama recruits itself, Saban in a living room was always going to get you a top one or two recruiting class. And if you're not Nick Saban walking into that living room, I think no matter, just by default, it's going to change.
Right. We talked about it the show after the Saban news happened. I mean, regardless of who Alabama hires, Hugh Freeze, with this coaching staff that we think is about to come together and form, is set up to recruit this state like Auburn has never recruited it before. Should
and could, and that's the proof of concept we talk about. You have an opportunity to really gain some traction and momentum. It'll never completely flip because, again, Alabama will hire somebody that's a good coach, and the name recognition and all that kind of stuff, and NIL collectives if Saban's still around. But there's no doubt that you can move the needle just by default. You're not going to have to compete against the greatest coach of all time. And that's what kills me when people take shots at Auburn for celebrating this or being giddy about this. The greatest coach of all time is retiring, and all of college football to a certain extent is glad because they all get to move the needle. But for Auburn, it's even more personal because he was right across the state. So, that's in itself is going to move. Anybody that thinks that it's going to maintain what it was under Saban is being naive. It's not. It's going to slip some. Now, how far, that'll be the question. Just by the fact and the sole purpose that Alabama comes back a little bit on this now that Saban's gone and starts to have to do things, like everyone else does with not having the greatest coach of all time, that in itself should show Auburn moving the needle, especially in state. And so, yes, they have a chance to make some headway and some traction.
A lot of Auburn people calling him Husky Harsin, which is
no. I'm
not
telling
accurate.
you,
Funny, but not accurate.
I got to be honest. I mean, transparent, even when it's our own fan base that does that. Again, Brian Harsin did not come to Auburn as a Power 5 head football coach that just played in a national championship.
That's correct.
If that would have been the case, it would have been a whole different, dynamic for him coming here. So
I wonder how, I mean, the timing of this, I do think benefits Alabama because it's a little more difficult to transfer right now. You're gonna have to wait till after the spring to really do everything you need to do. So curious to see what's going to happen. So, as far as we got a lot of new folks that have joined in since we started the show. So we'll kind of talk about some of the big Auburn news bits over the last 24 hours. So with Carnell Williams and Zach Etheridge no longer on staff, and we've speculated on who all is going to come in and be a part of this class or a part of this coaching staff moving forward. Which name that's being thrown around, or I guess official with Charles Kelly, which potential new name or actual new name, if you want to say Charles Kelly, are you most excited about to see on staff right now, Darrell?
Okay, I'm gonna do this in two different categories. I'm gonna go new that isn't here yet that we've heard, and that would be Derek Nix, because I gauge the hiring of a coach with how much pushback the current coach that he's working for gives. Okay, how valuable he is to his current program by how much of a rear end the current head coach shows when he tries to leave. And remember what happened last year. Lane Kiffin threw a fit when Auburn tried to get Derek Nix from Ole Miss, and there were some things that happened, and so Hugh Freeze moved on. I like Nix more than anybody out there that's a potential name to come to Auburn new, even more than Kiffin, Chris Kiffin, or whatever. I think he's a perfect match with Hugh Freeze. It's a match made in heaven. I love the fact that he's now getting an opportunity to be an offensive coordinator, and I love his recruiting acumen, and I love the fact you're pulling him from Ole Miss. It's win-win-win.
Yeah, and they've worked together. And they know each other so well. And also when you bring in Chris Kiffin, who is my answer to this question, I love the fact that all three of those guys have worked together before, and they were very, very successful together before they overachieved at Ole Miss, especially for that time period, I think, pre-transfer portal. And it's just, you don't see a whole lot of guys that have been successful as an assistant coach in the NFL and also have a track record of being a high-level coach at the college level, both on the field with scheme and play calling, but also as a recruiter. That's just, you don't see that a whole lot. And he was an effective recruiter before his stint in the NFL. And so I think couple that now with the fact of like, look, I know what it takes. I can get you there. Adding that kind of to his tool belt of things that he can kind of use to help convince whatever kid to come to Auburn. Because obviously NFL getting to the next level is going to be a big part of the type of player that Auburn is pursuing and able to recruit now. I love that. So my answer is Chris Kiffin.
Can't go wrong with either one, my friend. And it's amazing how there's an Ole Miss connection to both. And, Hugh Freeze, there's an Ole Miss connection. So I don't know. It's different, but I love both. And then as far as the existing hires, from the moment we were ready to go and go live after the debacle that was the Music City Bowl, and that morning we got wind that Charles Kelly was coming back, that really moved the needle for me. I was extremely excited. This is a guy who for years I have followed his career and was hoping he would come back to Auburn. And his name was kind of always bantied about when a defensive coordinator position opened up. Heck of a recruiter, good on the field coach, a lot of experience, knows the high school coaches in this state like nobody else. I mean, he got a network. And it's going to be interesting to see what his role is, because he was at Alabama, how he could help in some of the portal stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, what's his role? Because we've talked about it. Recruiter means two things now. It's recruiting high school players and recruiting other players in the portal. I'm interested to see.
And your own team. And your own guys.
Team. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Which I think is what Zach may have been really good at. And so like that may be
he's salvaged some kids. I think he salvaged some kids. And again, another guy that you just got to really tip your hat to and thank him for his service at Auburn and everything he did.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like this was a thing coming for a while, and it was still kind of up in the air, but he still was a huge part in getting Keontae Scott to stay, as well as Kayan Lee. I think that's huge. So, hats off to him for doing his job until he accepted this thing at Houston. So good for him. Cool. All right. Anybody have any questions? We'll do questions for a few minutes if anybody has anything. And then if not, we'll wrap this up and sail into the weekend. Darrell, you and I are going live after Auburn and LSU's basketball game tomorrow. So that's going to be exciting. Hopefully the Tigers start 3-0. TK saying not the Land Sharks. I think we're going to be Tiger Sharks, baby. If all that comes to fruition, Tiger Sharks are a thing. I'm okay with that.
I like that, Zach. That's pithy. And Tiger Sharks are very underrated as a carnivore and a menace in the ocean. People think great white. Tiger sharks will get after you, my friend.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been like attacked by a shark, but I don't want it to be a tiger shark if I was.
Well, marine biology is a hobby of mine, so I dabble in that. Yeah, I dabble in that a little bit. So
I had no idea. Yeah. I had no clue.
Well, I saw Jaws when I was a kid in 1975, and it changed my life forever. And so I got every book that I could read on sharks, species, all that. So I know the ones that'll bite you in the rear end and the ones that you're fine to swim around.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So you can feel safe getting in the ocean with me. I'll take care of you.
Sweet. Okay. All right. I don't think we could end on a better note. So, Darrell, how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
Follow me on X, DAP6410. And then tune in tomorrow night for the postcast live after Auburn plays LSU.
Let's go. Please like the video. Please subscribe. Love you all so much. War Eagle, we will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.